All right. Hey, everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be talking about behavioral archaeology. Now, I don't know this methodology in depth. I believe it was created by IDEO, but conceptually, it's what we want to talk about, or at least what I think we want to talk about. And basically, what it is it's observing someone kind of go through their day or their life with or without your product. Sometimes we'll ask users to come in and sort of describe it to us. And that's not nearly as cool as being able to actually go watch someone do it. But, you got to take what you can get. Sometimes you're actually just asking if you can listen to support calls. To try to hear and discern what people are complaining about. So behavioral archaeology is basically, again, looking at how people interact with a certain type of product. So this is a measuring cup by OXO. It's basically designed so that you can look at it from the top. It's one of my favorite measuring cups and the only ones that I actually buy. And basically the way that it was designed was actually watching people use measuring cups. And often what you would see is they would have it on the counter because it's very stable, and then they'd be pouring in whatever liquid or dry goods they needed to pour in there. And then they would lift it off the counter and read it from the side to make sure that they had the correct measurement. So by redesigning the measuring cups so that you actually got the correct measurement by staring from the top and looking at the numbers and labels and things up here, you get an easier experience. So another one is from IDEO specifically. IDEO is kind of credited with coming up with behavioral archaeology. And what it was is actually the mouse. Now, the computer mouse initially was derived or was developed by Xerox PARC, and I can't remember the person's name really quick. Douglas Engelbart from Xerox PARC started developing the original mouse, and then Apple hired IDEO to make it more usable for the Lisa, and later it would be used with the Macintosh. From a software perspective, Intuit, when they first started, I don't know what they do now, but when they first started, they were kind of famous for going and asking people if they could watch them, in their live environments, interact with their software. And the reason you want to do the live environment thing is because it's not sterile. People don't, they might clean up, but you'll be able to see like their real environment. If somebody's trying to do their taxes while their kid is screaming, that's not going to happen in a lab environment. That's something you can only get by actually watching someone work. So basically, hardware to software, technology to cooking, right? Like this is a concept that exists. Find a product that you want to kind of do something different with, watch how people are interacting with that product already, and do something different. So when we talk about it today, what we're going to be looking at is the cell phone. And that's because, again, Studio Refresh, this is on the list of things that I need to replace or at least get a different one, no matter what. And this is the iPhone 8, and we'll sort of talk about this as we go. With that said, yeah, let's just jump into the top down. All right, so we're not going to be doing this where we basically watch me for the day. So with that said, we're going to kind of go through the sort of interview method of figuring out behavioral archaeology. So usually we want to start with sort of statistics. Now, just heads up, this is not going to be a redux of the iPhone. I'm probably going to do that next week, but mainly we're just looking to, again, get this sort of information across with regard to behavioral archaeology. How do I use the device, kind of a thing. It is a little bit awkward that I'm basically going to be the interviewer as well as the subject, and we're going to try to make that work. So generally speaking, we want to start with sort of getting statistical information out of the way, right? So the subject is Josh Bruce, 40-year-old male, 5'11", and has the average size male hand of 7.5 inches from the tip of the middle finger to the heel, base of the heel of the palm. Operates as a consultant, currently working as a Scrum Master and Agile coach, as well as doing productivity coaching for individuals. So that's sort of, and considers himself to be very familiar with the Apple company, Apple products, having owned a 2009 MacBook Pro, a 2013 MacBook Pro with Retina display, a 2017 inch or 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, and currently the owner of a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro as well, having also owned the iPhone 4, 5, 5S, and 8. Also owns an Apple TV, as well as a few accessories such as the AirPods 2. So that gets the stats out of the way, right? So we kind of know who we're dealing with, and we kind of can take out some of the biases that we have with regard to, oh, this person doesn't know this, or maybe they've got small hands or large hands or whatever, right? Like, it's just a way for us to get a lay of the land. So with that said, what we want to do next is sort of go into, give me a day in the life, right? Give me a day in the life of you, emphasizing sort of this device and your relationship to it, right? So, okay, well, normally I wake up and I'm in bed and I'm usually laying down. So what I'll do is I'll grab the device the way I normally do, which is in preparation for one-handed use, because it gives me a nice grip. I can hold it upside down, and it's not going to, fall into my face. That's probably one of the other things. He's, subject is also into user experience design as well as software development. This can become problematic because basically it might be hard for the subject to disassociate themselves from doing your job, right? So because I'm laying down and I generally want to kind of catch up on some things, what I'll do is actually interlock my fingers from my left hand, because I want to be able to use the entire screen and operate it without having to, get into an awkward position. So I will go ahead and launch the phone. And basically, I have the 4 main apps that I get in touch with right here as my third row of app icons. So it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And generally speaking, I will go right to left. So I'll take a look at Twitter, kind of get a brief feel for that, usually not spending any more than 2 minutes. Mainly it's just to see if I've gotten any notifications. Because I turn all the notifications off because I don't want to be interrupted. LinkedIn, same thing. Facebook, same thing. And then YouTube, I might watch a YouTube video or at least go through the feed and add a bunch of stuff to my playlist. Now, if I'm trying to do something a little bit more complex, what I'll end up doing is cradling the phone in both hands and kind of operating it that way again, so that I get that full use of the screen. Then basically I'm going to be getting ready to go into the shower, and it's going to basically depend on how I'm feeling at the time, right? Either I'm going to go in and I'm wanting it to be a meditative thing, and I'm just going to kind of sit there for the most part, sit in the shower and just let myself get out of the fog of waking up. Versus other days, I really want to get in there and have something going that I can learn from, or basically that's going to help me catch up with the world in a audible fashion. So I do bring the phone into the shower with me because my showers typically will last 30 to 45 minutes. Just because, again, I'm sluicing off kind of that sleep, and it is my morning coffee. That's my morning coffee ritual, if you will. And I like having the phone in there because I can sort of call out, hey, Siri, do this or that, or add this to my shopping list and add that to my shopping list. or I'll be listening to something on YouTube, because there are a lot of YouTube channels that I do follow that are, pretty informational for some of the things that I'm looking to do in the future. Then once I get out, of course, I'm going to get dressed, right? And basically what I do is I'll take the stuff that's in my pockets, and I'll put it in the pockets for my new pants. So in the back right pocket, that's where my wallet goes. And generally speaking, I put both the wallet and the phone on the right side, because I am more dexterous with my right hand than I am with my left. And despite the fact that I write with my left hand. So if it comes to manipulating things with my hands, it usually goes over much better in my right hand than in my left. So the wallet will go in the back right pocket. The phone goes in the front right pocket. And one of the things that I appreciate about the design, the way that it is right now with all the ports on the bottom, all one of them now, is that basically I can pull the phone, or I can put the phone in here with the ports up, right? And then when I go to grab the phone, it's already ready for me to go. And, I don't have to mess with things. And I also don't have it in the back pocket where I have to reach around to grab it. But that was a design that was a design change from the 4 to the 5, was basically this ability to have your 3.5 millimeter headphones, earbuds plugged in, and without having to sort of rotate the phone or spin it or do anything weird, you could literally just curl over and slide it right back in, right? So appreciate that. So now let's get into the left pocket. So we can see the subject has change, money, cigarettes and a lighter, keys, and the AirPods case, the AirPods 2 case. Now at this point I might ask, like again, if I was talking to the subject, why does the phone get its own pocket and everything else sort of gets shoved into this other pocket? And my response to that would be, well, I've tried putting the AirPods 2 in with the phone, but what ends up happening is sometimes the case will brush up against or hit this in some way to make it come out of silent mode, like it flips that switch, right? The switch to come out of silent mode. And I don't like the phone to be making any kind of sound. I don't put the keys in there because I have a tendency to grab the phone more often than I grab things that are in this pocket, right? So this pocket I want to have ready access to just come in, out, do something real quick, and then put it back. Whereas this pocket, the keys I only use when I'm home or checking my mail. The cigarettes I use every couple of hours. The cash I only use when I'm purchasing things, and I'm a minimalist, so I don't really purchase things. And with regard to the AirPods, generally the way I use AirPods is I will always have one in, so let's say the left one, and basically the other one will be left in the case, and I'll have that hanging in my ear. And that way I can listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something on YouTube or something on Vimeo or something, right? I can be listening to something, and any sound that comes out of this device, short of the timers, is basically going to be for my ears only, right? And when the battery in the left one starts to die, I get the low battery warning. So I'll grab the right one, put that one in, let it sort of figure its life out, and then take the left one out and put it back into my case. So basically the AirPods, depending on how much activity I'm actually doing, can actually last me 2-3 days, because the case is just charging one at a time and that sort of a thing. But that all goes in my left pocket because I'm not going to be accessing it nearly as often. And it also doesn't require, at least from my perspective, doesn't require as much dexterity. I basically only need to be able to feel the difference between the items, because if you notice, all of the items are structurally different. I can tell by shape what I'm reaching for or what I've got. So once I get the pants set up and everything like that, they could be slacks, could be whatever, depending on if I'm going to work or not. Then I walk to work. So going with the average day. Now I've been car free since 2010. So basically I, got rid of my car in 2010 because it couldn't pass the Virginia safety inspection. And I've never been in a position where I've needed to buy a new car. And you can kind of tell by these, the wear on the jeans, that I definitely do walk everywhere. It's about half a mile to my office. I may walk something like 3 miles a day, 3 or 4 miles a day on average, according to the health app on the phone. And so once I get to work or wherever rather as I'm walking, I will also generally be carrying a water bottle. So, because I have a very low tolerance for dehydration. And so I'll be carrying the water bottle in my left hand, and the phone will be in my right pocket. So I can always come in here and, open it up. Now, if I'm listening to, say, YouTube, I'll do that just because I've been doing a lot more of that lately. I'll be listening to YouTube and like an ad will come up and I want to skip it. And that means I've got to bring the device out and skip it here. That's one of the reasons that I'm actually really a big proponent of being able to control the whole device easily with one hand, because basically I don't like putting this down, because if I'm going to work especially, I'll be wearing a messenger bag that weighs about 13 pounds between my laptop, my work laptop, and then some accessories and the Remarkable and everything like that. So I don't like bending down and picking things back up and that sort of a deal. So basically, a lot of times I'll be listening to YouTube, for example, and I don't have YouTube Premium, so it doesn't play in the background, and it always has ads right now, which makes sense. That's fine. So I do find myself bringing it out of my pocket, skipping the ad, and then I have to manipulate the device so that when I put it back into the pocket, the touch screen will actually be facing out away from me, because otherwise, if it's face toward my thigh for various reasons, it will actually activate the screen and interact with it. So I could end up accidentally hitting a different video or launching an ad or something like that, and then I have to go in and finagle it. With that said, it could also I could also end up getting phone calls or need to send a text message real quick, or whatever, get a ride share. I do that as well. So basically that's why I want to be able to, or that's why I'm a big proponent of doing things, being able to operate it by one hand. And that's actually why I have these 2 rows of apps. They're not actually where they should be, at least in my opinion, because this home screen is supposed to be apps that I use on a real regular basis. And I basically have these 2 rows of apps there to basically push down these other 2 so that I can get to Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as my calendar, clocks, timers, the reminders app, and my time journal app that I developed back in the day. And so I will say that the Hey Siri functionality has been very helpful for me, especially with the AirPods 2, because I facilitate a fair amount of meetings. And basically, what ends up happening is, sorry, I turned off Hey Siri on my phone, but not on the iPod. Um, and so basically, I facilitate a lot of meetings, and it's nice inside of a meeting, especially since I always have that AirPod in my ear. It's really nice to be able to go, hey Siri, start a timer for 15 minutes, right? So I'll be in a meeting and then I'll want to do some type of activity, and I'll give the instructions to the group and have them go on their way, and then I'll turn around just because I am sort of in this awkward position, right, of being in a crowd of people, and it's not, randomly saying hey Siri is not ubiquitous enough, right? At least not yet. And so I'll turn around and I'll kind of whisper, hey Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes. And sure enough, that happens. So I do appreciate that, and I wish that there was more stuff that we could do. So let's see. Then after work, I walk home. So pretty much the same scenario as me walking anywhere. Again, water bottle, left hand, phone, right pocket, AirPod in my ear, and trying to control as much as I can without getting the phone out. Now, sometimes your subject will say things that make you kind of ask questions, and as the researcher, if you will, it's important not to ask too leading or judgy of questions, and a lot of it can just come through in your tone. And I'm not saying that I'm the most practiced at that, but it kind of is what it is. So something that the subject said, basically, anything that I can do to not have to bust out the phone makes me curious. So, the question becomes, why don't you want to bust out the phone? And, at that point, you could get somebody to kind of launch in to talking about their pain points, because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for, what are the pain points that people are experiencing? What sort of hacks have they put in place to overcome those pain points, if any? And then, of course, what they like, right? What do they not want to change? And this goes into, my Agile coaching practice and Scrum Master practice with, something like a retrospective, where we kind of go, what went well, what didn't go well, really examining that to figure out what we're going to change. And so basically for me, it's, every time I have to go up to the top left of the screen, I feel in pain. Whether it be launching an app and then following a link on that app to a browser. Basically, that puts the app switcher back up here in the top left corner. So again, I'm going to have to get into this, sort of customized hold, this grip that's not even a grip, right? Because the phone is not being held by anything but the surface tension of my skin. And that's how I get to the top left part of the screen. And so why don't I want to bust out the phone? It's big. That's, for me, it's just big. And, again, that's why I've got these 2 rows of apps. And there's the way that you can phrase sort of some of the questions is ask them if they're aware of a feature, because it's possible they may not be aware of a feature, right? I still hear people complain about YouTube not being able to play while the screen is locked. Well, it can, as long as you have YouTube Premium, right? It's a premium feature with YouTube, and that's just what YouTube has decided. So, kind of is what it is. And so, anyway, in this case, I might ask, are you aware of the reachability feature? And if the person said no, then that's kind of a tick mark or an indicator for me that, okay, maybe we're not marketing this well enough, right? Maybe we're not discussing this reachability feature well enough. Or the subject, me in this case, might say, oh yeah, the double tap the home button, I've got it turned on. It's off by default, right? So I have to know that it's there, and I have to go into settings. And generally speaking, I don't want to speak for all Apple people, but basically one of the reasons that I buy Apple products is because they have rational defaults, or pretty rational defaults in my brain. And so I don't have to change the settings ever. And so the more that I find myself having to monkey with settings, the more I'm getting frustrated at having to do that. So anyway, turn reachability off, or turn reachability on by, or activate reachability, Jesus, by tapping that home button twice. It's actually a feature, I believe, that came out with the 5S, the 5 or 5S, because basically that's when we got the 16:9 aspect ratio and a longer, so a taller phone than the 4. And some people couldn't reach even up to the top here, right? Because again, I said I have average male hands, which is 7.5 inches. Average female is 6. So with that said, yeah, I totally know about reachability. Thanks for letting me know. And I, as the researcher, might go, well, so do you not like that? And I can say, no, I don't. And they might, again, because this is conversational, right? The idea is to try to build up this rapport to the point that people, your responses are basically low key enough that the person feels like they could tell you anything, and they don't feel like you are going to judge them as being ignorant, incompetent, or just set in your ways and not wanting to change anything. And so, not that everybody is like that. There are some people who really don't. But anyway, don't want to change. So with that said, basically, no, I don't. Okay, well, why not? Well, so it just seems weird, right? So my objective is to get to this top left corner. Chances are, if I'm reading or looking at something, my thumb is going to be in this sort of hitchhiker pose, unless I'm reading, and then I'm going to be, sort of in the middle of the screen, and then my screen gets cut down to basically the top half, because I just find it easier to, or more efficient to keep my thumb in the middle and then scroll. In either case, I'm still trying to get to that top left corner, and I have to go down and interact with the screen to basically go back up to where I was, right? And then if I'm have my finger straight up and down, I have to pass all of the screen, double tap, and then come back up, right? So I'm doing this motion. And so that just seems horribly inefficient. And in that same time frame, I can get into my sort of, it's actually, I think, faster, right? So I'm going to try to launch this or get into this finances folder, and I'm going to do it both ways. So here's the reachability. Here's that little grip, done, right? So trying to activate reachability. Reachability has animations, and they're going to take time, so on and so forth, and that just is easier. It puts the phone in a precarious position, basically that wherein it could be dropped easily, but that's just kind of the way it is. One of the things I did do is I brought in this accessibility switch, and I really like this thing from the perspective of you can put it anywhere on the screen, you can change the opacity, you can even change what actions do what. And so I have put reachability as the single tap. So at that point, comparing this, right? So this is reachability from the home button versus reachability from the switch, right? It's just faster and easier. And like I said, I do really appreciate all the things that you can do with this switch. You can even set, I think I have screen capture, yeah, set up for double tap on the switch. I used to have it set up for screen reading, and that's because you can actually turn text-based books into audio books if you have VoiceOver read them. So yeah, anyway, and then the next page for me, this is even less used apps, and then even less used apps on the third page. So I do have 3 pages worth of apps, but like I said, right now, these, I don't know if they're actually in the right place, right? Because Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook used to be inside of this social folder, and that social folder used to be at the top because I could get to all of this easily. And without doing that, the sort of hack grip, if you will, to be able to reach that, I've got to really stretch and get up there. And what I find is that sometimes the pad, the bottom pad of my thumb, will actually touch the screen and I'll accidentally do something I didn't intend to. So anyway, so walking home, now I get home and basically there's not really much else going on with the phone. Normally it's just in the right pocket doing its thing. And yeah, so that's sort of a day in the life of me using the iPhone. And like I said, we will get into the Redux as well, but this is behavioral archaeology. So within that story of me talking, there becomes this sort of breeding ground for how can we, not necessarily accommodate this subject, but be able to look at their lifestyle in such a way and go, there might be something there. Maybe maybe there's an AirPod that's a little bit more intense, right? Maybe it looks like an old school hearing aid to give you more battery life, and maybe that has I don't know, cell connectivity or something, but if you want to dial the phone, you have to interact with the phone. Or it could be, let's get Siri to do more stuff, or it could be, because there is shortcuts as well where you can develop your own shortcut, and I haven't really delved into it to know if I can overcome some of the shortcomings I have with it as it stands right now. But then there's also, maybe we can talk to app developers, right? Because one of the things that happened, or one of the other features that maybe there's a question of why don't you just do this, is the swipe to go back, right? So you can do this swipe to go back action. And you can also do these things down here. But if I want to get into reader mode, I've got to go up here, and now it's a 2-step process instead of just a 1-step process. And for most websites, their navigation is over here, right? So I'm constantly having to get into this position. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, why don't you just use your left hand? Well, remember, most of the time I can't because I'm carrying something in my left hand, be it a notebook, a laptop, my bag, this water bottle, right? Both my hands are not free, so being able to do something there isn't going to work out. And in some cases, again, going back to the work with your app developers concept, in some cases, it's that the app developer has taken over the UI, right? So, but did not indicate necessarily how far they've taken over the UI. So this is a color picker for my lights. And there's still a caret pointing to the left here that indicates that I should be able to swipe just like I did with the Apple website. But if I do that, right, like weird stuff happens and I start accidentally changing the color of the light bulb when all I want to do is go to the previous screen, right? And so that's when I bust out the little index finger hold. And that's why, because it's more reliable, really? Thank you. Because tapping that top left button is more reliable than the swipe gesture across third-party apps, then yeah, I just get into this position of don't use that swipe. Instead, use, that weird grippy thing. So with that said, another video on the iPhone with regard to the Redux. This one's mainly about the archaeology. So again, just what's a day in the life of, and if you can get multiple days, and again, actually observe the person working in their normal environment, that's golden. So anyway, let's switch to the face camera and close it up. All right, so there you go. Just again, tie-ins to the product lines as well, but also just the idea of behavioral archaeology, and really as somebody who is creating a product, watching people interact with your product or similar products, right? And how you think you could do something different. Now, from an experience design perspective with regard to designing your own life, which is kind of one of my coaching things, is basically pay attention to how you work, right? What are your habits? What can you change easily versus not? And what workarounds do you put in place? And are you satisfied with those workarounds? And then if you're not, how can you deliver feedback and maybe help the people who create those things improve, right? Because I'm looking for that even with this channel, or with this. I don't want to necessarily call it a channel because of some of the stuff that we're planning on doing later, but basically being able to put something out there and get feedback and respond to the feedback. What people are watching, what are people interacting with, so on and so forth, and basically modifying things accordingly. So with that said, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.